Hi, I'm Rowan from howtosingforyourlife.com. Today's video is all about how to prepare for doing a webinar or some kind of training video like this. If you are a singer, you may feel that this isn't for you, but actually if you're working in a band or you're a musician who needs to go to get gigs somewhere, you may find some of these tips useful for any of the work that you might do, whether that is teaching singing, or it's going to places to get a gig at a venue, or some of the other things that you might need to do is just using that elevator speech. Talking about what you do and being able to explain that coherently and succinctly and in an interesting way too. There are all sorts of reasons why this video could still be helpful to you as well. A lot of people are working through giving speeches, presentations, webinars, anything where you have to do some kind of public speaking usually comes up at some point in your life. And if you're unsure how to cope with the speech that you have to deliver, then here are some tips to help you. The first tip is actually about your content, what you're going to talk about. One tip for structuring that comes from the days when I had to write a thesis for my music degree. And I actually found that structuring all of the information, deciding on what to include and what to discard, worked quite well if I picked out my favourite quotations and structured things around those sections of the meaning behind the quotation, of what was being suggested or what it inspired in me to talk about. Sometimes using quotations can be really helpful to inspire other people as to what your message is, or to where you are in your thinking, what things you appeal to, what things you appreciate. So for example, one of my favourite quotations is from Francis Bacon, the painter, and his quote was, "Life is so meaningless, we might as well make ourselves extraordinary." Now that quotation for me is quite important because it's showing the kind of sarcasm and wit, perhaps, in saying life is so meaningless. Lots of people feel like, well, no, it's not meaningless, you can't say that. But then the conclusion that we might as well make ourselves extraordinary rings absolutely true for me, because I really want to do things that are very different. I'm always doing something a little bit different, whether it's with my music work or with my training. And my singing teaching. So all of those things are encapsulated in that one little quotation. Now for you, if you're offering some kind of webinar training, you'll need to condense perhaps into only an hour all of the information you have around a particular subject. Now if you're doing that, you may find that only 2 or 3 quotations would be necessary or even relevant to your talk, but it might be a good way to work your way into understanding what really rings true for you about what you love about your work, about what you would love people to feel enthused about, and you can structure then your content around what fits the main idea around this particular quotation. If you pick 2 or 3 quotations, you then can have 2 or 3 sections in your webinar that include your most important work. And from there you can draw little subheadings and categorize that and work out how much time each little section is going to take. But by giving a quotation at the beginning, you can inspire your listeners to really think about something new, or you can inspire them to have this thought that opens them up to the information you're about to give them. The second tip for giving a presentation or a speech is to make sure that you think about the energy you need behind it. So for me, in my training videos, for example, I always stand up, except for one. The very first video I did was about how to sing even when you were feeling really low energy and you didn't feel you could do very much. And in that video I showed you how you could still be sitting down and give yourself a lot of energy behind what you do. So it is possible, and you can go over and watch that video, How to Sing on a Bad Day. You can go over and watch that video for the tips about that. But for now, if you are giving some kind of training, you may find that simply standing up as you give your video will give you that extra emphasis, extra energy, extra focus that helps you deliver your speech or your presentation far better and with a lot more energy behind it. The third tip is actually about technical kind of things. Depending on the type of video you're doing or the type of webinar you're doing, you will need to use different types of microphone. If you are doing a webinar where you're giving a lot of information, you will need your notes in front of you. If it's just a voice-based webinar, then in fact you may be better off sitting down and using a big condenser mic. That would be something like this. This is my Rode mic that I often use for recording vocals, but this is ideal for a kind of radio setting. If you are doing some kind of training video and it involves maybe moving about, perhaps it's an exercise video, you need to use a different microphone, obviously. So what you need is something more multi-directional, something that will pick up perhaps the sound of the music that you would have in the background as well as your voice. So the key thing with this is the positioning of the microphone. If you have a multi-directional microphone and you position it to just be on a mic stand, perhaps over your head or somewhere just off camera, you can use that to pick up your voice primarily the closer it is pointed to you. But also if you have music playing in the background on the other side, that will still be in the background in terms of the actual audio realm. The other reason why that is the best thing for you is if you are moving about a lot, having a radio mic, which is the next thing I was going to mention, would be a real problem because you could easily be brushing past with your arm or with your hand a radio mic that you would have positioned on you. If you're moving about a lot, anything could be shuffling past that and actually causing lots of shuffly sounds that you really don't want on your presentation. However, where a radio mic is ideal, those little mics that you pin on your clothes, would be for if you're doing an interview with someone. So if you're doing some kind of training where you actually are interviewing someone to get their opinion on something, and you're just sitting down, it's a static kind of video, then using a radio mic would be ideal because it will pick up your voice and nothing else. It will be focused in on your voice and you can use the same with the other person. Finally, the last tip is actually a don't. Don't drink coffee beforehand. Now there are two good reasons for this. Okay, one, first of all, is if you drink milk or cream in your coffee, those are going to clog up your throat because dairy products generally will clog up your throat. The second reason is that if you drink coffee, depending on how often you normally drink coffee, depending on the strength of the coffee, it can have the effect that it will actually speed up your heart rate, and that will also then mean that you take shallower breaths. So actually what happens when you've drunk coffee, and perhaps it might not be until an hour later when you're right in the middle of your webinar recording, is that you will find you suddenly have much shallower breaths, and you're doing this a lot as you're talking and you find you have to try and catch your breath and you really need a good long breath after a little while, and that is very, very distracting for anyone listening to that, so you really want to avoid that. I hope that all of those tips were really helpful for you, and I hope that that will be something that you can apply to whatever kind of presentation you're doing. I know that today's video has been that bit longer because I'm trying to cover lots of different bases to answer questions from a couple of people that asked me about this. If you like this video and you found it useful, then do let me know in the comments box below. And let me know about what projects you're working on. I'd love to find out more about the things that you use these training videos for. And also if you have any questions about other things that you'd like to know about, or you have some ideas for what you would like to be answered in a following video, then let me know that too, and I shall try to include that in the next video. Have a great week. Thanks very much for watching.